My mom once held my report card over the kitchen sink and set it on fire in front of my entire family. I was 11 years old. The only thing I had done wrong was getting a B plus instead of an A. I watched the paper curl up in the flames while everyone at the table stayed completely silent. And somehow, that wasn't even the worst thing she ever did. As growing up, my house didn't really feel like a home. It felt more like a courtroom. Every day I felt like I was on trial, and I was always guilty until I proved that I was perfect. My parents weren't monsters. They worked hard, sacrificed a lot, and genuinely believed they were preparing me for the real world. But somewhere along the way, their discipline became control, and their control became fear. When I was 9, I had a schedule taped above my desk. Wake up at 5:30 in the morning, study before school, study after school, homework, review, sleep. There was barely any time left to just be a kid. My dad used to tell me, we didn't work this hard so you could waste your life playing. So I stopped playing. I stopped asking for things. I stopped complaining. I thought that if I worked hard enough, got good enough grades, and never gave them a reason to be disappointed, eventually they would look at me and say, we're proud of you. But I learned something much later in life. When a child's worth becomes connected to their performance, there is never an amount of success that feels like enough. A few months after my report card was burned, I got another B. This time, I hid it in the bottom of my backpack for 3 days. I was more afraid of showing my parents a piece of paper than I was of getting a bad grade. When my mom finally found it, she didn't yell. She just looked at me and said, I expected more from you. Somehow, those 6 words hurt more than screaming would have. I started believing that disappointing my parents meant I was disappointing as a person. By the time I was 13, I had become very good at hiding things. I hid bad grades. I hid mistakes. I hid friendships. And eventually, I even started hiding the things that made me happy. That was when my school announced the student talent show. I'd always loved drawing, but my parents thought art was something you did when you had nothing better to do. One afternoon, my art teacher asked me to enter a drawing I had made. I almost said no. Then she told me, you don't have to be the best. You just have to let people see what you can do. For the first time, I decided to do something simply because I wanted to. I practiced after school for weeks. I stayed late in the art room. I even lied to my parents and told them I was studying. The night of the event, I stood backstage holding my drawing with shaking hands. There were hundreds of people in the auditorium. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage. I showed everyone my work, and for those few minutes, I wasn't my grades. I wasn't my parents' expectations. I wasn't a project that needed fixing. I was just a kid who had made something he loved. And then I heard the applause. I smiled. I actually felt proud of myself. Then I looked into the crowd and saw my mother standing near the back. My heart dropped. She had found out. After the ceremony, she didn't congratulate me. On the drive home, she barely said a word. When we finally got inside, she looked at the drawing and asked, how many hours did you waste making this? I didn't know what to say. She continued, do you think this is going to get you into college? I remember holding that drawing against my chest and realizing that she didn't understand why it mattered to me. But what hurt even more was that I had started to believe she was right. Maybe happiness was a waste of time. Maybe everything I loved had to be useful. Maybe I wasn't allowed to want something unless it helped me succeed. 8 years later, I became exactly what my parents had always wanted. I got straight A's. I took advanced classes. I went to a good college. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Teachers praised me. Relatives told my parents they had raised an amazing child. People would say, your parents must be so proud. And I'd smile and say, yeah, but inside, I was exhausted. I couldn't make simple decisions without worrying about whether they were the right ones. I couldn't choose a college major without asking myself what would make my parents proud. I couldn't even answer one question on a college application. It asked, what do you want to do with your life? I stared at that question for almost an hour. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because nobody had ever really asked me what I wanted. Every decision had already been made for me. And that's when I realized something was wrong. I'd spent my entire childhood trying to become the person my parents wanted. And somewhere along the way, I had forgotten to figure out who I was. It took me years to understand that my parents weren't trying to destroy me. They were repeating what they had learned from their own childhoods. They believed pressure created strong people. They believed strict rules kept children safe. They believed success would protect me from the hardships they had experienced. And maybe they were right about some of it. Their sacrifices gave me opportunities they never had. Their discipline taught me how to work hard. But love and control are not the same thing. Fear of disappointing someone isn't the same as respect. And being successful doesn't mean you're happy. I didn't understand that until I was in my 20s. One weekend, while cleaning out an old box at my parents' house, I found something I hadn't seen in years. My old report card. The same one with the B plus my mother had burned. Somehow, part of it had survived. I sat on the floor holding that damaged piece of paper, and suddenly I remembered that 11-year-old kid standing in the kitchen, terrified that one grade could make his mother stop loving him. I wanted to tell that kid something. I wanted to reach back through all those years and say, you didn't do anything wrong. You were a child. You got a B plus. That's all. I realized I'd spent years trying to earn something I should have never needed to earn in the first place. Love. My relationship with my parents isn't perfect today. We still disagree. There are things from my childhood that I wish had been different, and some wounds don't disappear just because you understand where they came from. but I've stopped measuring my life by whether or not they approve of every decision I make. And if I ever have children of my own, I know exactly what I want to do differently. I'll push them to work hard, but I'll let them fail. I'll encourage them to succeed, but I'll never make them believe success is the price of being loved. I'll let them join the weird club, make a terrible drawing, get a B+, change their mind, and figure out who they are. Because I don't want my child to grow up looking at an old report card and wondering whether they were ever good enough. And if you grew up with parents like mine, if you know what it feels like to sit at the kitchen table in silence after getting a bad grade, or to feel guilty for wanting something your parents didn't understand, I want you to remember one thing. You were never supposed to be perfect. You were supposed to be a kid, and you never had to earn the right to be loved.